Welcome back, everybody, and thanks for tuning in again for another video. Today, we have a man who I've been trying to get on here for quite a while, but we both have had some scheduling difficulties and we keep ourselves pretty busy. But today, I have author Timothy K. Clark. We're going to be talking about his book, The Rise of the Dragon Witch, his writing process, cars, and just whatever else we can get ourselves into today. So, without further ado, let's jump right on in. Timothy, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Uh, Thank you for coming on today. I appreciate you making the time.
Oh, no worries. Time is in short supply these days, but yeah, it's always good to help out a fellow writer.
We try to. That's the backbone of the community is supporting each other where we can. Because let's be honest, life is kind of bleak these days, so we have to bring some spark where we can.
Oh yeah.
For those who may have never heard of you or your book, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
I've written three books now. My very first book was in 2020. It's called The Mice Storm. It was just sort of my first book that I just had to get out of the system kind of thing because I used to be a screenwriter in Hollywood back in the day and didn't do it for a little while. I was raising the kids and the itch came back and I needed to create something. So I wrote that book. It's not great. I'm really proud of it, but it's not like you learn more as you go along, of course. And I'd love to go back maybe and fix some things, but then I said, okay, I'm good now. I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. But of course, like I said, it always keeps coming back, and you still need to keep creating. And so I created another book called The Rise of the Dragon Witch, and that is an epic fantasy. And I love watching fantasy shows like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, and I love reading the books, but I thought I'm not smart enough to write a fantasy. So I said, if how can I do this so I can get away with it? So I came up with this book, and I wrote another book that's actually a little bit different. Like that's the other hard part for me is consistently writing in the same genre, I
Right.
guess. Because I also wrote a paranormal urban fantasy called The Pleasure Card just this year. And it was just again, it was a story that was in my head, and I had to get it out. And now I'm working on a sequel, sort of, to Rise of the Dragon Witch.
Oh, nice. Tell us a bit about the premise of the Rise of the Dragon Witch.
Well, like I said, I'm not smart enough to write in a Tolkien style, but I've read the books and I thought that's why I always thought I can't. I'm not this smart. I'm not that great of a writer. I'm not the person who will thrill you with the prose, but I will take you on an adventure.
Right.
So I said, how can I do this? How can I write this fantasy and make it believable? And I said, well, I'm going to do it in first person, and I'm going to do it in the narration style of someone from our modern times. And what if they were taken into a world like the Game of Thrones, and then suddenly said, okay, now go save the continent.
Right. You
And
know.
she's exploring it at the same time as I am.
Right.
So I always said, well, she may not know that that's a hydra. She may not know that that's a hellhound, but she can describe what she's seeing as something if so I get something wrong, I can just blame it on her. She got it wrong. She described it wrong.
Right. It kind of reminds me of that movie. Oh, shoot, what's the name? The Black Knight had Martin Lawrence, um, where he worked at the medieval restaurant, and then he got tossed back in time.
Yeah,
That's literally what I
The
thought of.
Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. For you, what is it about writing that you love the most? Is it the word building, the creative outlet?
Um, some people have told me that I'm a funny person. I say funny looking, but for me, it's kind of a more about the dialogue. I like I said, I spent a lot of time writing screenplays, and that's dialogue. But it's also again telling the thrilling stories, the adventure. Having it be something that is maybe it's nothing that's perfectly brand new. It's not something that's incredibly sparklingly imaginative, but you know putting characters in situations and having them talk it out, sort of, so to speak.
Right.
And that's kind of what's fun for me, is focusing on the characters, and having them be vastly different, and having to still work through a problem. That kind of stuff is so much fun for me. For me, basically, when I write, I'm one of the right, like some people write and see words. When I write, I'm actually watching a movie and trying to type it down as fast as I can, and it's in my head, and I'm just I even miss some things, so that when I go back and I reread the work in the editing process, I'm like, oh, I didn't even describe that, or oh, I completely forgot to mention this, because it's just going along, and I'm just trying to record it.
It's like you're tossing that VHS and hit rewind.
Yep. Yeah, but it's fun for me, because again, I'm a big movie fan. I've always been a movie fan, and I would even see, like, what got me into writing when I was younger was I'd go see a movie, and then I had to read the book about it, because the book was always better, as everybody knows, but it also filled in some blanks.
Right.
So I would go and watch, and I'm really old. I would go and watch Escape from New York in the theater, and then I had to go and read the book. I watched Rambo, the original book to that, which is a little bit different than the whole Rambo series,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So because I wanted more of that world, I wanted to read more about it, and you got to find out some things again from that. So then I just started reading more and more books, and so it's just a great combination of the two for me.
Right. I loved Escape from New York. It's still one of my favorites.
Oh, it is a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Um, so out of the Rise of the Dragon Witch, which character would you say was harder to write than the others for you, if any at all? I mean,
For me, it was Finley, who is the main character. She is a feisty little college student. She's got a rich dad, and he's always telling her what to do. She doesn't know what she wants to do with her life, and a little bit of it had a lot of me in it. A little bit of her character is kind of who I am too, and so I remember being that age and being stupid and doing stupid things. And so that kind of was easier for me. But the hardest thing for me was to be the old white guy writing the young white girl, that kind of thing. I relied a little bit on my daughters. I have now a senior in college, and a senior starting in high school. But as I was writing that, I was like, does this make sense? Does this, does that help? So it was getting in touch with my feminine side, I guess, because I can imagine so many people would see, oh, this was written by a guy. It's probably not going to be good, and
mhm,
he's not going to do this right. He's not going to create a character that sounds like it was truly her. And that was the hardest part, because I remember the very first person that read it. That was the first thing I asked was, did it sound like it was written by a young college age student? She's like, you got a couple things here and there wrong, but overall it was perfect. And that was the thing that scared me the most.
yeah, that's definitely that's one of the biggest things that you hear about too. When men are writing women's parts, it seems to draw the most criticism. Even though I've had some books that the rest of the book was pretty messed up, but that's what people decided to focus on. And I'm like, God, I think we have bigger issues, but
Yeah.
than what we got wrong here, or just maybe
Yeah.
didn't know.
For me, it was the scary, like I said, the scariest part, because I just wanted to get it right. But the problem I have now is that she is in my head, and I'll even post stuff on social media, especially on threads, where I'm like doing it in her voice, because once she's in my head now, I'm like, oh, here she goes again, and she's popping off once more, and so it's fun, but it's also like a little scary. It's like, oh no, she's taken over again.
We've lost control.
Yes.
um, is there a character from this book that you consider giving its own side story to?
Um, yeah, because everybody has always had those fascinations with the schools of magic. And one of my characters is sort of the mage gone rogue. And he's the one that's actually put the whole thing together, their whole band of misfits that's trying to save, the continent from the mad king who wants to become immortal. And, where did he come from? what's that school like? Everybody's was so obsessed with the world of Harry Potter, and She Who Should Not Be Named created a school that everybody wanted to go to.
Right.
And so I kind of wanted to say, what was that school like? How did they learn these things? How I bet it wasn't as nice as Hogwarts, and it's not. And because I'm actually writing that into the sequel, and it's a horrible place. But so I maybe can't necessarily do the side character story, but I can at least show you where he came from.
Right. Kind of a more of an origin story rather than a new adventure type of avenue.
Yep.
Um, can you tell us a bit about the next book coming out? Because the next one you're releasing is The Rise of the Dragon Witch 2, correct?
It's called Return of the Dragon Witch, and if I ever did a third book, if somebody said, "All right, we need more," it will be the Fall of the Dragon Witch,
Okay.
and I won't go back to that world again. Knock on wood, that never happens.
Right.
But I sort of left a little bit. The very first book, Rise of the Dragon Witch, is a standalone because I didn't think I would be able to write another one. And this book is epic. I mean, it's big. It's like 600 and some pages. It's thick. But so I said I don't know if I'll go back to it. But at the very end, I sort of left off in an epilogue where I just said, "Hey, I won't have time to tell you any of my other stories because something bad is happening, but there are other stories," and then so it kind of gives some hints.
Right.
And so I just picked up with one of the hints. There's two, and one of the hints is what I'm now writing in the Return of the Dragon Witch, and adding in most of the characters from the first book and bringing in a couple of new ones. And the first book is told entirely from my female main character's point of view. It's from Finley's story of coming to this fantasy world. And the second book is actually two additional people telling it from their side too. And I had to do it this way in order to tell the story because I didn't want to have to jump to a third person to be able to tell all the story. Because the biggest problem with a first person story is you only get to see what that character sees. And you sometimes need to have some background that they didn't get to see, and you need to include that. So it's not terribly distracting. It's not jumping back and forth constantly, but I did want to be able to include their stories too, and that's been a big challenge so far. I'm about 130 pages into it, and I'm having to have two other people in my head, and that's a little harder. But I also know I'm going to have to go back and rework a lot of what I've written so far because I've got her down. I don't have these other two down.
Right.
Not yet.
Yeah, I made that mistake with my first book, which is I write a lot from, first person because that seems to be the only way that I've found that I can concurrently tell a decent story. And I didn't show enough of behind the curtain, enough of everybody else. It was more him, his path, and everything that happened around him, and not really
Yeah.
anything else. I kind of regret that a little bit.
The biggest problem that I found in writing with first person is if you've got a bad guy, whoever the villain is,
Right.
it's hard to have them be anything other than the villain that, they're just bad to be bad
Yep.
because you don't get to hear, their inner monologue, or you don't get to see some of the things that they've been doing behind the scenes. And in the Rise of the Dragon Witch, my villain is pretty much in that way where it's really hard to she only gets to run into him a couple of times before the big climax at the
Right.
end of the book. And so that was hard, making him believable and making him like real, because like every villain is the hero of their own story, and they think what they're doing is right, and you don't want to just turn them into a caricature of the snidely whiplash, I'm going to rule the world kind of stuff. And that was a struggle.
Right. Yeah, that's the only thing I have to remind myself is like you learn with each project you do, and so you kind of learn a little bit more each time on how to improve that and how to give more insight in a little bit more of a smoother way
Yep.
as you go along.
Yep.
What advice would you give to new writers?
I didn't start writing books. I started writing screenplays way, 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 way back when, and moved to Hollywood and said, I'm gonna do this." And the first 4 or 5 screenplays I wouldn't have shown anyone. I think my wife was forced to read them, but um, it's hard to tell stories effectively. It's not hard to tell stories, but it's hard to do them well. And there's one of the things in screenwriting forces you to do is you have to condense it down to 120 pages. Now imagine writing a novel that you think can be 300 or 400 pages, and you can include what they're thinking about. You can include all of these other little subtle pieces. When on a screenplay, you've got to pack it in. And if you go to 121, it's like you're trying to figure out how, if you can just change the margins, you can get it down to 120, because that's 2 hours. One page equals 1 minute of screen time.
Wow.
And so it forces you to get your, we used to do 3x5 cards. We would plot it out. It's like, here's the inciting incident, here's this, and then the next one is even bigger, and then there's this big one, and then there's our climax, and then the denouement kind of thing. And it taught me how to tell stories effectively, tightly, and make sure that you're not losing people in the middle. I think one of the biggest complaints I hear from other authors when it talks about their writing is, I love the beginning, I love the end, but it falls flat in the middle. And I'm thinking, I bet people stop reading maybe at the middle, because again, so it's writing lots of stories, it's writing as much as you can, getting it. I'm not saying your first book may be perfect, but for most people, when they're telling stories, they have to learn to get that build up, so that they've got their attention, and they're able to add the twists and turns in, and you learn, hey, how can I foreshadow this so that at the end it all comes together?
Right.
And you only can do that by telling stories over and over and over again. So if you write a book and it's your very first book and you've never written anything at all, again, keep working on it. Don't throw it away. Maybe set it aside and come back to it as you work on telling another story. But if it's something that you really truly believe in, just keep going back and saying, what can I change? What can I add? How can I amp this up a little bit? How can I keep the reader's attention? And I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying that everything has to be as thrilling as a Spielberg movie, because again, that's my background, and that's kind of how I write the books. But how can you keep pulling them in to want to read more, to get to that next chapter, to keep going?
Right.
And like, it doesn't have to be, oh, some big new calamity must happen. And what if it's just somebody gets betrayed? What if it's one small change that nobody saw coming? Maybe even you as a writer didn't see coming. I know I'm talking a lot, but another screenwriter gave me a really great advice one day, and he said, "What's behind door number 3?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Tell me what's behind door number 3." He goes, the bad guy goes into the room and the woman's got a gun. Only one thing's going to happen. She's going to shoot him, or he's going to take the gun away from her and shoot her. I go, but that's door number 1 and door number 2. What's door number 3?
Right.
And that is somebody else comes in and takes the gun away from, I mean, that's what most people assume. I can either only do 1 or I can do 2. But what's something that would really turn it on its head and make it completely different and really just sort of change everything? You might have to go back and replot some things, but it is a great way to, like I said, amp it up.
That's one of the problems that I had too, was that, well, one, I didn't do any beta readers, I didn't do any ARC readers, it was my first book, and I was really naive to like what we really needed to have done, and really probably should do in hindsight. And then I think one of the things that I got a lot was there was too much dialogue, and I didn't leave. A lot of people felt like I didn't leave enough to trust the reader, to leave enough to their imagination.
Yeah.
So that was one of my hard things to like.
Yeah. And even if you put in too much, they'll still miss it.
Right. It is highly possible.
I've actually seen a couple of I've seen a couple of reviews where somebody's mentioned something and I'm like, no, that's not right. But I mean, not in a bad way, but I was just
Right.
like, they saw something that I didn't see, or they saw it in a way that I didn't think about. And that happens too, because you're not putting every little bit in there, and you can't, because it would then be 900 pages. It would be 1,200 pages, to cram every little tidbit in there.
Right. Um, Once upon a time, you yourself had a booktube channel, which you had to unfortunately resign from, at least for the time being. Do you see yourself picking that back up someday? Is that something that you're interested in
Yeah,
re-sparking?
I really enjoyed the interviews. I did about 9 or 10 of them, and I was hoping to just get other authors out there, helping people discover them. It was almost always indie authors, and it was just people that I enjoyed, following them on social media and seeing their social media posts. And I went and I would actually read the samples of their books, and their samples were freaking good. So I was like, more people need to know about these guys and girls. And that it was a fun way, because I do YouTube on the side for another project. I already have, I have the ability to edit. I have the ability to easily interview and have equipment and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, for me, it was just a no-brainer to take 30 minutes to 45 minutes out of the day and do it. But it just, too many other things were coming up, and I just
Right.
did not have time to keep it going. And I even put out a couple more feelers for people, but you get limited on social media, and your posts don't always get seen. And
Yeah.
I didn't get a whole lot of responses from people filling out the form. So I was like, you know what, it's okay. I can always go back to it and pick it up at some point.
Right. Yeah, that's the one thing that I found with it too, is because I have two channels. So one is just um, interviews of artists, creators, local businesses, just people who would like a spotlight, would like to maybe throw their business out there a little bit further, or people that I watch on YouTube that I think are interesting, that I just want to generally sit down and have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And then there's this. This was just, I was like, well, what can I do to give back to the community that's given me knowledge, given me feedback, helped my pages grow,
Yep.
um, in a free way
Yeah.
that doesn't take much time, doesn't cost much, but is still on the meaningful end.
Yeah. When I'm not trying to be funny, at least on social media, I also try to be as helpful as I can. It's one of those things where, like my children, I try to help them. They don't want to hear from dad. No, I can't tell them how to fix this or change that or do this. So I can at least help other people maybe that are interested in doing that. So that's why I always love to help where I can,
Right.
because I'm old and I've gathered some knowledge,
You've
and
you've been
I've made so many mistakes that I'm like, ooh, don't do what I did, because I'm an idiot.
yeah. Let's not go down that road. That,
Yeah.
that's funny that you said that about your kids, because that reminds me, there was or I don't know if you're a fan of Lincoln Park at all.
Yeah.
Um, but Mike Shinoda was at home, and his daughter was going to do a a singing contest kind of thing at her school, and she was trying to learn guitar. And he comes in, he's like, "Well, if you put your fingers here and do this," and she's like, "What do you know about music?" And just walks off, like she was completely oblivious to, like, her dad is actually a rock star. And so I just thought that kind of made me laugh. It's kind of
Oh
along
yeah.
the same lines.
Oh yeah.
Um, like me, you love cars, hence your car channel and the things that you do within the car world. What is your favorite era of cars?
I'm a 60s guy. I grew up in the 70s and 80s seeing all these classic cars that were still driving around, the old muscle car. They were like I think I looked it up one time, because I've got a 1968 GTO Le Mans. And I looked it up one time, and in TVs and commercials and movies, the GTO from the 60s showed up 395 times in like music videos and TV shows and all of this. So I was like, that's what I need to have, because I just grew up seeing that car so much. But yeah, I mean, like even today, the detective is still driving the old cool muscle car from the 60s. They roll up in the TV commercial, and it's the cool car from the 60s. So that was when, and the cars they're making today are faster than anything from back then. You can get a brand new Dodge Challenger that has 1,100 horsepower and blows away my old 60s car that weighs 4,000 pounds. but you'll never be as cool as me when I'm driving that.
Also, they're not made like they were. Like,
Oh, no.
yes, earlier cars were heavier, but everything's so computer and so just, I'm gonna
Well,
say,
yeah, if you open up
breakable.
the hood of any car today, it's jam packed all the way to the top.
Hmm.
In my car from the 60s, I can get in it, the engine bay, and close the hood
Yep.
and still have room.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. That's where my fascination began, because it's like, my grandpa had a Dart
The
when I was
Dodge
growing
Dart.
up, and it wasn't in the greatest of shape. Let's just be honest. But
When it was brand new, it wasn't in the greatest of shape.
but that's what started it, And then, as much as I started getting into YouTube and watching car channels, I think the first one I ever watched was Vice Grip Garage. Uh, Love the dude, really good. And then so it just kind of opened my eyes to, like, okay, I've never seen that car before.
Yeah.
Let me learn about this car, and then, like, oh,
Yeah.
55,
I
never.
I grew up basically being raised by my mom, and my dad passed away when I was 6 or 8 months old. So he was a car guy too, and I think that's where it came from. But I never had anybody show me. I had to learn by myself, and I'm actually on my car channel. One of the things is again I'm helping people, but it's doing things wrong because I don't know how to do them. And most of the car channels that are out there is these guys who are pretty much like experts. They've been working on cars their whole lives, and they had probably somebody showing them how to do all those things when they were young. So when I'm doing these things, I'm doing them for the first time, and I almost always start every video with, "Okay, I've never changed a wheel bearing before, so let's give this a try. I've never rewired a car before, so let's give this." But the best thing about it is the comments that I get in the videos. Thank you so much for doing this. Or, I've been so scared to try this, and I know you're an idiot, so you've tried it and you made it work. Thank you so much for that. And that's what makes me happy. I mean,
Right.
that's where I get that endorphin rush when somebody comes back and says, "Thank you for even making a video about this." Because I'm like, I looked for a video on how to change a door lock on the trunk of a '68 Pontiac,
Right.
and nobody had made a video on it. So I made a video, and I said, "I think this is how it works." And I spent 20 minutes trying to figure it out. Finally figured it out. I said, "Okay, here's how you do it." And so, that for me is part of the fun. And that, and most people don't tear me apart in the comments for, "No, you don't do it that way. You do it this way. I've been doing it for 40 years, and that's not how you do it." Instead, they go, "Hey, good, you're doing good. You're little buddy. You're making it work. Yay, good for you."
And
So I don't get torn apart in the comments too
right.
much.
Well, that's one of the things about car YouTube in general, though, is that it's either one of two sides. It's either they're like, oh, you have to do this and do this, but then in all reality, not everybody can afford a giant paint booth. Not everybody can afford to go get, a crate motor from, wherever. Or some of us are limited to Amazon and maybe, the back parts shelf at O'Reilly's, or,
Yep.
and that's one of the reasons we were talking about it earlier. That's what drew me to Dalton from Pole Barn Garage, because he takes, in the bluntest way, no bullshit. He's like, look, this isn't perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but it's going to get the job done, and it's going to make it last longer than what it was before I touched it.
Yep.
And it's, you don't get that often. You don't get, the no bullshit, no nonsense approach of, hey, this may not be expensive. I bought this, as he puts it, the Chinesium. I was watching his latest video, and he was working on, oh, what was it? I think it was a Jaguar.
Yep.
I think, and he was
There
going
was the
over.
distributor from that car.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep. So it's refreshing to see people, actually be honest about it and be like, look, none of us are perfect. We gather our information where we can. This is what works. This is what doesn't work. But you don't need $1 million.
Yeah, and even bringing it around to writing, it's kind of the same way. It's like some people don't show on their car channels the things they got wrong.
Exactly.
And when you're writing a book, mostly people are only seeing what you had spent months, years, sometimes perfecting and getting right. They didn't
Right.
see all the struggle that went along behind the scenes. They didn't see them asking for help. Hey, how do I get this? They didn't see the first draft that maybe the beta readers got to read. And the beta readers were like, "Oh, you need to trash that
Right.
whole second half," whatever it is. And so it is tough because it's, you don't always get to see the work in progress, the behind the scenes kind of
Right.
stuff. And that's what I do on my YouTube channel, where if I mess it up, I'm like, oh, I messed that up. I could easily have just cut it out, redid it, and said, here's how you do it. But I don't mind showing I got this wrong. And
Right.
I even had people say, you were almost there. I was screaming at the TV. The bolt was right there and you missed it. um, but I don't mind showing that, because again, there may be somebody out there who doesn't know how to do it.
Right. And also too, it's just if you cut everything out like that, I just feel like you wouldn't be you. You know what I mean? Because none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes somewhere. We're all not going to know how to do something at one point in time in our life.
Yeah.
So there's no shame in being like, oh, hey, yeah, I screwed this one up, but then I figured it out that this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
It's everybody learns at their own pace and in their own way, um, and that's something that seems to be lost among the haters on the internet.
Oh yeah, everybody's got an opinion. They have them on social media too.
Right. Um, I know we talked about that you don't get the chance to read a lot, but when you do, who are a couple of your favorites that you have read or that you like to read if you have the time?
I've actually been reading. I actually picked up Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, um, and I'm a fan of his work and his style, because it's kind of similar to mine. I would always say, if you like Mistborn, you might like Rise of the Dragon Witch, because some people are always like, oh, he doesn't have the best prose. I'm like, well, neither do I. um, but it's very similar in style, so I really do appreciate him. But I'm actually a big fan of the, I guess the spy novels would be a great term for it. Way back in the day, I used to read like the Tom Clancy books, the Craig Thomas books. They made one movie out of a Craig Thomas novel called Firefox Down with Clint Eastwood back in the 80s. But I read all of his books. But then that got me into John le Carre, who is a actual former spy who turned author. He was a British spy, and he wrote a book in the 60s called The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. And they even had that as a Richard Burton movie in the late 60s, I think it was. But they've turned a lot of his stuff into movies too, like the Russia House, Taylor of Panama, The Night Manager, those kinds of books. But I've always been a huge fan of John le Carre's. Um, and there's actually and I've got I've got almost all of them. I love those big science fiction compendiums that they have for the year's best.
Yep.
And it was an editor named Dozier, I think, Gardner Dozier, and he had like 18 or 19 years of sci-fi, and they were just short stories, and it was like there was like George R.R. Martin and Isaac Asimov, and then you had your lesser known authors,
Right.
and they would write these short fiction pieces for these, and he would put them in the book, and they were in magazines and everywhere, and he would put them all together. And I liked those because when I would find a sci-fi author that I liked, I would then go and read their novels. That's a great way, I think, to find, if you're into sci-fi. I'm also a big sci-fi fan. If you're into sci-fi, it's a great way to sort of read and find somebody you like. So you may find one that you're just like, all right, I wasn't crazy about that short story. Maybe you don't go look up that author.
Right.
But then every once in a while you find somebody you're like, oh, this is cool, because you get a sample of their work and you really like the story, and then you can kind of go check them out.
Yeah, that's always good. I do the same thing with music, where it's like if I really like a song, I'll add it to the likes, and then I'll go back and explore further albums and other things, so you can kind of discover other new music. And then I love it because it gives you at the bottom of the page, it'll give you like, if you like this,
Yeah.
listen to this, and just discover some
They're
new.
rarely right, but it does kind of sometimes lead you in the right direction.
It does. You are 100% correct on that. There are a lot of misses,
Yeah.
but I have found several great little bands that
Yeah. Well, the
have
funny
come
thing
from
is
that.
about music, and I think that it maybe happens with authors and with other things too, but with music, you might have two or three albums from some artist back in 2005,
Right.
and you never look to see if they have had anything recently, because you're like, well, if it doesn't show up on this playlist, or if it doesn't show up on the radio, if anybody's listening to the radio anymore, you kind of forget about them, and then you're like, oh my God, they have. We were talking about this the other night. I have, like, have you looked to see if they've done anything new? And I'm like, no. And so, but every once in a while, it's good to go back and look and see, hey, that artist you like might actually have something out now that you do like.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I was talking with my youngest daughter, and she was a big fan of Lord. And she was like, "Oh yeah, that was back in like 2015 or something." And she actually looked on her phone, and she was like, "Oh my God, she has more albums than I thought she did." And I'm like, "See, I'm like, you need to go check it out." And sure enough, the next time I hear something from her playlist, she's got a new Lord song on.
That's how it works, man. The curiosity, definitely. If you run with it, you'll find some things that you never knew existed.
Yep.
Some good, and some you're like, I wish I never would have heard that. But
Yeah.
that's with everything in life.
Oh yeah.
Before we end off today, did you have any events or any videos coming up that you would like to promote or share?
No, really. I'm just focused on. If you're interested in the car channel, it's called Rust Revival Garage. It's on YouTube, and oh look, I even have a shirt.
Oh, there you go. See,
But it's on YouTube. It's just me, like I said, working on cars. I've got an old '68 Pontiac, a 1985 pickup truck, a 2000 Jeep TJ, an old '78 Yamaha motorcycle that I'm actually working on right now. So I'm always mixing it up, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but it can be kind of fun to follow along and see what I get wrong and what I get right. I'm writing the sequel to Rise of the Dragon Witch, and it's Return of the Dragon Witch. I would like to think I would have it done by December of this year, but I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much all. Anything else that I'm doing, I'm on social media on Threads and Instagram. It's Timothy K. Clark, author. If you kind of want to follow along there, that's cool too. But that's about it for me.
and guys, I will leave link all of his socials in the description, as well as a direct link to find the Rise of the Dragon Witch, so you can check it out and buy a copy for yourself. Tim, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Oh, totally welcome. I had a lot of fun.
Me as well. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, man.